All right, let's dive into making some serious cash in the trucking industry. I mean, hitting that $250,000 mark, right? You with me?
Absolutely, and we've got a great resource to guide us, How to Make 250K Trucking, written by a million-mile trucker named Tremaine Richardson.
Yeah, a guy who's actually walked the walk, right? Not just some talking head.
Exactly. He really breaks it down, starting with why so many truckers struggle financially, even though trucking is a huge industry. It's almost $1 billion. Do you know that?
Yeah, it's wild. What is it, like 900 billion? So what's the secret? Why are some folks raking it in while others are just getting by?
Well, the book dives into that, and one big trap Tremaine talks about is what he calls the miles mindset.
Okay, so like more miles equals more money, which logically makes sense.
But it's not always that simple. It's not about just working harder. It's about working smarter.
So it's not about grinding out those miles, but being strategic.
Exactly. He emphasizes focusing on what he calls profit per mile.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Yeah, he gives a great example. Imagine two truckers, one doing 3,000 miles a week at $1.50 a mile, the other doing 2,500 miles, but at $3 a mile. See the difference?
Oh, for sure. The one driving less is actually making more because they're focused on getting the most out of every single mile.
You got it. Now, the book lays out three main paths you can take in trucking: company driver, lease operator, and owner operator.
Right, and each has its own pros and cons, of course. Can you break those down for us?
For sure. Let's start with company driver. This is usually where people start. Basically, you're an employee of a trucking company, driving their truck, getting a regular paycheck.
Okay, so less risk up front. You're not worried about the truck payments and all that.
Right, and usually some benefits too. The downside is, of course, your earning potential is capped because you're working for someone else.
Makes sense. So you're trading some freedom and earning potential for stability and less financial risk. What about lease operators?
Lease operators rent a truck from a carrier and operate under their authority. More control, potentially higher pay than being a company driver.
Sounds tempting.
It can be, but those weekly truck payments eat into your profits. And there's a real danger here with some of these lease agreements.
What do you mean danger?
Some agreements can be downright predatory, designed to keep you in debt, with hidden fees or those scary balloon payments at the end.
Yikes. Yeah, that's something you got to watch out for.
Absolutely. You have to read the fine print, understand the terms, and make sure you're getting a fair shake. Now, if we're talking highest earning potential, that's the owner-operator route.
That's the dream for a lot of folks, right? Being your own boss.
You got it. You own your truck outright or have a solid lease-to-own plan. You're in control. But it comes with the most risk and responsibility, of course.
Makes sense. More reward, more risk. Now, even if someone isn't ready to be an owner-operator yet, the book emphasizes thinking like a CEO from day one.
It's such a smart approach.
What are the biggest mindset shifts for someone just starting out in trucking?
It all comes down to understanding your numbers. Know your revenue, expenses, and, most importantly, your profit. That means knowing your cost per mile.
So even as a company driver, you're thinking about this as a business.
Exactly. Maximizing your earnings at every level.
Now let's talk about something that can be pretty scary for someone new buying a truck. New or used, buy or lease. Where do you even begin?
Right. Big decision, lots to consider. New trucks have that appeal warranty, that new truck smell.
Sure, but they come with that rapid depreciation and higher insurance, too.
Absolutely. Used trucks are more budget-friendly, but you got to be careful.
Oh, I bet. Mechanical issues and all that.
Tremaine's got a whole checklist in the book, but it's worth every penny to have a mechanic do a thorough inspection before committing to a used truck. Check everything: maintenance records, leaks, any weird noises, and get an ECM report that's like a vehicle history report.
Yeah, knowledge is power, especially when you're making a big investment like this. Okay, so you've got your truck figured out. Next step is setting up your business structure, right? Sole proprietorship, LLC, S Corp. What are the pros and cons of each?
Yeah, each has its own legal and tax implications. For most owner-operators, the LLC is the way to go. It's simple and protects your personal assets.
So if something goes wrong with the business, your personal stuff is protected.
Right. You might switch to S-Corp taxation later to save on self-employment taxes as your profits grow, but the LLC is a solid foundation.
It's like building a house. You start with a good foundation and expand later.
Exactly. Now let's get to the exciting part: finding those high-paying loads.
Right. The book goes into detail about the different types of freight, which ones pay more, which ones to avoid. What are some of the most profitable ones?
Well, there's dry van, which is your general goods, kind of the baseline. Then you've got reefer, temperature-controlled freight, food, pharmaceutical, stuff like that. That usually pays better.
Okay, makes sense. Higher stakes, higher pay.
Right. And then you've got flatbed, hauling oversized loads, even more profitable. And then at the top, you've got specialized hauling, the big stuff, the really valuable stuff.
So you're basically leveling up in the trucking world, going from basic to specialized.
I like that analogy. It's about knowing your worth and building up to those high-paying opportunities.
No, it's not just about the type of freight, right? What else affects how much a load pays?
Oh yeah, tons of factors. Seasonal demand plays a huge role, like produce season. Reefer rates go through the roof because everyone needs temperature-controlled trucks.
It's like supply and demand in action, right?
Exactly. And then there's load urgency, those
Yeah.
expedited loads. Those often pay more because they need to move fast. And then there are the dreaded deadhead miles, the miles you dry empty.
Yeah, those are killers.
You want to minimize those as much as possible. It's about finding the balance between the right freight, the right routes, and avoiding those empty miles.
Sounds like it's more about strategy than just luck. So how does a trucker actually stay in those high-paying lanes?
It takes work. Tremaine talks about mastering load boards, becoming a skilled negotiator with brokers, and ideally, building direct relationships with shippers.
Okay, I want to hear more about those strategies, but we're out of time for this part of our deep dive. Welcome back. So last time we talked about that profit per mile, the different paths you can take in trucking, and what to think about when buying a truck and setting up your business. Now let's talk about taking it to the next level, scaling your operation to bring in even bigger profits.
Yeah, scaling up, it's exciting, but it's also a big step, Tremaine really encourages truckers to ask themselves some tough questions before jumping in.
Oh, like what? What kind of questions?
Well, like, are you already squeezing every bit of profit you can out of your current setup? Do you have a good, reliable stream of those high-paying loads? Are you really ready to go from just driving to actually being a full-on business owner? And do you have enough cash on hand to handle those upfront costs that come with expanding?
Yeah, those are all really good points. I mean, it's a whole different ballgame when you're talking about more than just one truck. So what are the biggest, I guess, benefits and challenges of scaling up in the trucking business?
Let's start with the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine having multiple trucks out there on the road, all bringing in money, even when you're not the one driving. It's like passive income.
Yeah, that's the dream, building a business that works for you even when you're not working.
Exactly. You're creating a system of business that can run, even without you being directly involved in every single little thing. But, there's some downsides too, of course.
Oh, yeah, I bet. What are some of the challenges that come with scaling up?
Well, more trucks means more things that can go wrong, right?
Hmm.
More breakdowns, more maintenance, more repairs, higher insurance costs. And then there's the whole people management thing.
Oh, right, hiring drivers. I bet that can be a real headache.
Yeah, it can be. Finding good, reliable drivers, it's tough. And then even when you do find them, you've got payroll to worry about, making sure you're following all the regulations, all the complexities of managing people.
Yeah, suddenly you're not just a trucker anymore. You're a business owner, a manager, a whole human resources department all rolled into one.
Exactly. It's a whole different skill set. So the question becomes, how do you know when you're actually ready to take that leap and hire your first driver?
That's a great question. What are some signs that someone's really prepared for that step?
Tremaine, he lays out a couple of key things.
Mhm.
First, make sure you've got a steady stream of those good paying loads coming in, right? You don't want to hire a driver and then not have any work for them. And second, you got to have a good chunk of cash saved up, like maybe $20,000, $50,000 at least.
Wow, that's a pretty significant chunk of change.
Yeah, but you need that for a down payment on that second truck, insurance, registration, maintenance, and to make sure you can cover payroll even when things slow down, which they inevitably will.
So it's really about being prepared, both in terms of having the work lined up and having the financial resources to back it up.
Absolutely. Now, finding the right driver, that can be a whole challenge in itself. Tremaine suggests checking out those driver recruiting websites, maybe connecting with trucking schools and talking to other truckers.
Yeah, good old-fashioned networking.
Right. Word of mouth can be a huge help, but, there are red flags to watch out for too, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. How do you know if a potential driver might not be a good fit?
Well, one thing to watch out for is a driver who's jumped around from job to job a lot. Like, if they've had 5 or more trucking jobs in the past year, that might be a sign that they're not the most reliable.
Yeah, makes sense. You want someone who's going to stick around and be dependable.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And definitely check their safety record carefully. Lots of violations could mean your insurance costs skyrocket down the line.
Right.
And, just pay attention to how they communicate during the hiring process, too. If they're hard to get a hold of or unresponsive, that's not a great sign.
Okay, so you've found a good driver, you've got the truck, the freight lined up, the cash reserves in place. How do you figure out a fair way to pay them, a way that works for both of you?
Well, Tremaine talks about a couple of different payment methods. The simplest is just pay per mile, right? You pay them a set rate for every mile they drive. It's easy to calculate, and your costs are directly tied to their productivity.
Yeah, that seems pretty straightforward. What are some of the other options?
Another common method is a percentage of the load pay. So the more they make, the more they get. It gives them a direct incentive to go for those higher paying loads.
Hmm, interesting. But I guess their paychecks might be a little less predictable, right? Which could make budgeting tougher for them.
You got it. It's a trade-off. Each method has its pros and cons, and it's about finding what works best for both of you.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger picture of scaling your business in a way that's sustainable and profitable in the long term. What are some of the key things to keep in mind?
Yeah, Tremaine has some great advice on that. When you're buying that second truck, he recommends going for a used truck, maybe a few years old, something with low miles and a good track record. And he says to steer clear of those trucks with overly complicated emission systems because those can lead to some really big repair bills down the road.
It's like buying a used car, right? Reliability and affordability are key.
Exactly. And of course, you've got to make sure your insurance is updated to cover that bigger fleet. Shop around, get quotes from different companies because those insurance costs can add up quickly when you've got multiple trucks out there.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. Now, once you've got those trucks rolling and bringing in the revenue, how do you manage all of that? I mean, you can't be booking loads and handling all the logistics for multiple trucks on your own, can you?
You're right, you can't. That's where hiring a dispatcher or using a load board subscription service can really come in handy.
Okay, so it's like having a control tower for your trucking operation, making sure everything runs smoothly.
You got it. Now, Tremaine also talks about a big step that a lot of truckers consider, getting your own operating authority.
Oh, right. So you're not just a driver anymore. You're actually becoming your own carrier.
Exactly. It means you're not working under someone else's license anymore. You're running your own show.
So what are the main advantages and downsides of operating under your own authority?
Well, the biggest perk is definitely the profit potential. You get to keep all of the freight rate, no more sharing with a carrier. You're the one negotiating the rates, and you can potentially earn a lot more per load.
That's a pretty huge incentive. What about control? How does that factor into the decision?
Oh, control's a big one too. You get to pick your own lanes, set your own schedule, work with the clients you want to work with. You're building your own brand, your own business.
So it's about independence and freedom, really taking ownership of your trucking operation?
Right. But, with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Mm.
When you're operating under your own authority, you're responsible for everything. All the expenses, fuel, maintenance, repairs, insurance, it all comes out of your pocket.
Yeah.
And there's more paperwork, more compliance stuff to deal with.
So you really need to be on top of your finances and have a good understanding of the business side of things.
Absolutely. It's not just about driving anymore. It's about managing every aspect of your trucking operation.
Okay, so let's talk about the cost. What kind of investment are we looking at to get your own authority?
Well, first, there's the FMCSA authority itself. Getting your DOT and MC numbers. That's a one-time fee, about $300. But then you've got your BOC3 filing for a process agent, your UCR registration, heavy vehicle use tax. It all adds up.
So there are a lot of little fees on top of the main authority costs.
Right. And then the biggest expense is insurance. You'll probably need at least $1 million in liability insurance and $100,000 in cargo insurance to operate under your own authority.
Wow, so we're talking potentially $12,000 to $20,000 per year just for insurance.
Yeah, that's a realistic estimate.
Mhm.
And then you've got your truck and cargo insurance, maybe some setup costs to make sure you're getting paid quickly, and a load board subscription to find those high-paying loads.
So all in, we're looking at somewhere between, what, $15,000 and $25,000 in upfront costs, possibly even more.
That's a pretty good ballpark figure. It's an investment, and it's important to understand the financial commitment you're making. But, let's talk about why truckers choose to do this, right? What are the big benefits of having your own authority?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a lot to take on, so there must be some pretty compelling reasons to go this route.
The number one reason is profit, plain and simple. When you're running under your own authority, you get to keep every single penny of the freight rate. You're not sharing with a carrier. You're setting your own rates.
That's a pretty big deal. And what about control? How does that play into the decision?
Control is a huge factor. You get to pick the lanes you want to run, you set your own schedule, you work with the clients you want to work with, you're building your own brand, your own business, not just working for someone else.
It's the ultimate level of independence in the trucking world, right?
Exactly. But it's not all easy street, of course. You're responsible for everything. All those expenses, fuel, maintenance, repairs, insurance. And there's more paperwork, more regulations to keep track of. And then there's the whole thing with getting paid, which can be tricky when you're working directly with shippers. They don't always pay as quickly as you'd like.
So you need to be super organized, good with money, and comfortable handling all the different aspects of the business.
You got it. It's a different ballgame when you're calling the shots. But, it's not all about working with brokers either. Some folks choose to get their own authority and then cut out the brokers entirely by building relationships with direct shippers.
Oh, right, going straight to the source. So how do you do that? How do you find those direct shippers and get them to work with you?
Well, Tremaine has some really good tips on that. He says, to start local, check out those industrial parks and warehouses in your area and just ask around. Who handles their shipping? It's old school networking, but it can be super effective.
Because you're cutting out the middleman.
Exactly. And there's some great online resources too. You can find freight directories and use platforms like LinkedIn to connect with shipping managers and logistics people. The key is to be persistent, be professional, and show them you're not just offering a truck, you're offering reliability, you're offering safety, you're offering peace of mind that their goods are going to get where they need to go on time and in perfect condition.
It's about building relationships and proving yourself as a reliable partner.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, one of the challenges of working with direct shippers or even brokers sometimes is that they don't always pay right away, right? So how do you manage your cash flow when you're waiting 30, 45, 60 days to get paid?
It's a great question. I mean, delayed payments can really make it tough to keep your business running smoothly.
Yeah.
What are some strategies for dealing with that?
Well, one option is something called factoring, where you basically sell your invoices to a factoring company. You get paid right away, but you have to pay a fee, a percentage of the invoice amount. It's a way to bridge that cash flow gap.
So you're basically sacrificing a little bit of profit to make sure you have the cash you need to operate.
Right. And there are some really good factoring companies out there that can be a big help. Another option is to negotiate what are called quick pay terms with brokers and shippers up front. Some of them are willing to pay faster, maybe within a few days, if you're willing to accept a slightly lower rate.
So it's worth having that conversation and seeing what your options are.
Absolutely. And of course, having a good emergency fund is super important. Tremaine recommends having at least 3 months' worth of expenses saved up before you go independent. That safety net can make all the difference when unexpected things come up or when those payments are slow to arrive.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I wanted to touch on something that I think is really important but often gets overlooked in the trucking world. Avoiding burnout and creating a work-life balance.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Trucking can be demanding, physically, mentally, emotionally. It can really take over your life if you're not careful.
So how do you prevent that? How do you build a successful trucking business without sacrificing your health and well-being?
Tremaine, he has some really good insights on this. He starts by talking about what causes burnout in the first place, right? Things like working too many hours, not getting enough rest, always chasing those miles instead of focusing on profit, not having an exit strategy, neglecting your health. These are all big contributors to burnout.
It's like you're on a treadmill that never stops.
Yeah, it can definitely feel that way. So he really emphasizes the importance of setting boundaries and creating a work-life balance, even in a demanding industry like trucking. Figure out what your non-negotiables are. Maybe it's the number of days you're willing to work each month,
Right.
or maybe it's sticking to a driving schedule that allows you to have time for yourself and your family.
So it's about taking control of your schedule and making sure you're prioritizing the things that are important to you.
Right. And if family time is important, choose those lanes that keep you closer to home. Focus on regional routes instead of those long-haul trips that take you away from your loved ones for weeks at a time.
It's about designing a work style that fits your lifestyle and your priorities.
Exactly. And as your business grows, use that success to buy back some of your time. Hire a dispatcher to handle those bookings, use some of those software tools that can help you track expenses and invoices, invest in good, reliable equipment that's less likely to break down. All of these things can free up your time and reduce stress.
It's about working smarter, not harder, as you grow your business.
Exactly. And of course, taking care of your physical and mental health That's huge. Even on the road, find ways to stay active, eat healthy meals, make sure you're getting enough sleep. It might sound simple, but these things make a world of difference.
Yeah, it's easy to let those healthy habits slide when you're on the go all the time.
It is. But your health is your most valuable asset, you know? And finally, Tremaine talks about having an exit strategy. You don't want to be driving a truck forever, right?
That makes sense. So what does he suggest truckers do to prepare for the future?
He says to start saving and investing for retirement as early as possible. You know, open a solo 401k, maybe a SEP IRA, look into real estate or other ways to generate passive income. The goal is to build up a financial cushion that gives you options down the road.
So trucking becomes a stepping stone to a bigger financial plan and a more secure future.
That's the idea. And he also talks about, maybe expanding your business beyond just driving, right? Maybe you hire a driver and move into more of a management role, or maybe you buy more trucks and build a whole fleet that operates without you even having to be behind the wheel. You could even use your experience to start a freight brokerage or dispatching service.
So many possibilities. It's about using your success in trucking to open up even more opportunities for yourself down the road.
Exactly. The possibilities are endless.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about in this part of our deep dive. We've covered the pros and cons of scaling up, getting your own operating authority, and how to avoid burnout. In the final part, we'll bring it all together and walk you through a step-by-step plan for achieving that $250,000 per year goal.
We've crunched the numbers, give you a sample budget, and lay out some actionable strategies for maximizing your profits.
All right, welcome back. We've covered a ton of ground already: profit per mile, scaling your business, getting your own authority. But now let's get specific, right? You want to hit that $250,000 a year goal. What does it actually look like, week to week, month to month?
Well, Tremaine lays it all out in his book. To hit that $250,000, you need to be bringing in about $20,800 each month.
Okay, so a little over 20 grand a month. What does that mean in terms of, what you're making per week?
That works out to roughly, let's see, about $4,800 to $5,000 each week.
Okay, so that's the weekly target. How does that break down per load? I mean, what do you have to be making on each load to hit those numbers?
Well, it depends on a lot of factors. The type of freight you're hauling, the mileage, your expenses, all that comes into play. But to hit that weekly goal, you're probably looking at somewhere between $1,500 and $2,500 per load.
So it's not just about taking any load that comes your way. It's about being choosy, making sure those loads are actually going to get you closer to your financial goals.
Exactly. You got to be strategic about it. And you got to know your numbers. If you're running, say, an average of 2,500 miles per week, you need to be making at least $2 a mile just to break even, to cover your costs.
Right, but to really make some good money, you need to be aiming higher than that, right?
Oh, for sure. Ideally, you want to be shooting for 2.50 to 3.50 per mile or even more if you can get it.
Those numbers really give you a clear target to aim for. Now, let's talk about managing money, which is so crucial in any business, but especially in trucking with all those expenses. What does a good, solid trucking budget look like?
Tremaine, he actually gives you a sample budget in the book, which can be super helpful. Keep in mind, these are just estimates, but it gives you a good starting point. Fuel is your biggest expense, so plan on spending about 35% of your revenue to keep those tanks full.
Wow, that's a big chunk of your earnings right there.
It is, but that's the reality. Then you've got your truck payments, whether you're financing or leasing. That can be anywhere from $25,000 to $40,000 a year. And then, of course, insurance, maintenance, repairs, permits, fees, tolls, all those miscellaneous expenses, and of course, taxes.
Yeah, it adds up fast. It really highlights why being smart with your money is so important.
Absolutely. But here's the interesting thing. When you look at Tremaine's sample budget, you can really see how much control you have over how much money you actually take home. The difference between a trucker making, say, $50,000 a year and one making $75,000, a lot of times it comes down to those big three: fuel costs, maintenance, and taxes.
So it's not just about hauling loads, it's about being a savvy business owner.
You got it. Knowing your numbers and making smart decisions, that's the key. So let's get down to those essential steps that Tremaine lays out for hitting that $250,000 goal. What are the key things you got to focus on?
All right, let's hear it. What are those magic steps?
Okay, so first and foremost, choose the right freight, the right lanes. Not all freight is created equal. Go for those high-paying loads, reefer, flatbed, specialized stuff, and plan your routes carefully. You want to make sure you've got good paying loads going both out and back. Minimize those deadhead miles that just eat into your profits.
So it's like a two-pronged approach. Pick the right cargo and plan your route strategically to make the most of every mile.
Exactly. Now, next step, master those fuel costs right. Get every mile you can out of every gallon. Use those fuel cards, those discount programs, learn those fuel-efficient driving techniques. Every little bit helps.
And don't forget about those IFTA tax advantages.
Oh, right. Understanding IFT can save you a lot of money in the long run. Okay, so the third step is all about keeping those maintenance costs down. Be proactive, stick to a good preventative maintenance schedule, learn how to handle some of those basic repairs yourself, and have a dedicated maintenance fund set aside for those unexpected issues that pop up.
Preventative maintenance, it's like an investment in your truck's health and your own peace of mind.
It is. Now, the fourth step is all about negotiation. Don't just take the first rate a broker throws at you. Know your worth, ask questions, and be willing to walk away from a deal if it doesn't make sense financially. And remember, the ultimate goal is to build those relationships with direct shippers and cut out the middleman altogether.
So it's about knowing your value, being assertive, and building those connections that can really boost your bottom line.
You got it. Fifth step. This is about mindset, really. You got to start thinking like a business owner. Set up that LLC or S Corp. Keep your business and personal finances separate, and make sure you're setting aside money for taxes.
Good financial habits.
Exactly. And finally, the sixth step. Reinvest those profits back into your business. That's how you build long-term wealth and create a trucking operation that can thrive for years to come. Use those profits to pay off your truck early, maybe upgrade to a newer, more fuel-efficient model, and start investing in your retirement.
So it's not just about making money now, it's about creating a sustainable business that supports you for the long haul.
You got it. Now, we talked earlier about shifting your mindset from truck driver to business owner. What does that really look like, day to day?
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. It's a subtle shift, but it's so important.
It's about taking ownership of everything, knowing your numbers inside and out, not being afraid to say no to cheap freight, always looking for ways to do things better, more efficiently, more profitably.
It's about being in control, being the master of your own destiny.
Exactly. And that's what Tremaine's book is all about, giving truckers the knowledge and the tools they need to build successful businesses, create that financial security.
We've covered so much in this deep dive: profit per mile, scaling your business, getting your own authority, fuel costs, maintenance, taxes, relationships, avoiding burnout. It's been a lot.
It has.
Yeah.
But I think we've given our listeners a really good roadmap for success in the trucking industry.
I think so too. And to wrap things up, I want to leave you with a quote from Tremaine's book that really sums it all up. He says, "You are not just a truck driver, you are a business owner. Your job is not to drive, it's to maximize your profits and build wealth."
So true. Trucking is a tough business, but it offers incredible opportunities for those who are willing to put in the work, be smart, and never stop learning.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another exciting topic, breaking it down for you, giving you the insights you need to succeed. Until then, safe travels and happy trucking.